Hello for the last time today and on this year's C Sustainable Finance Summit. Thank you for staying. I know it's late Friday afternoon. It's nice weather. You want to go out of the city. So I really do, and we really do appreciate it. And I'm really glad that the agenda is so interesting. Before we jump to the actual panel, we have our keynote speaker here, Odessa Primus. She's a director at the Global Arena Research Institute. And Global Arena Research Institute is democratizing big data and AI, which is the only thing I'm able to say. I was trying to find out how to introduce you, but I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I will leave the rest up to you. So if you can join me on the podium.
Thank you. I think one of the reasons why my presentation is 20 minutes long is because that's how long it takes me to explain what we do. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Last day of the summit. Congratulations on being here, being awake. I see you pumping with energy. And welcome to anyone watching online. All right, let's start. So we're going to shorten it to Gary because nobody wants to say Global Arena Research Institute for 20 minutes. I'll tell you a quick story of how we began. The founder is Michael Coran, and he worked for a think tank that works for the Ministry of International Affairs. Obviously, they do research to support decision-making for the ministry and other entities. And he found it frustrating that a lot of these reports and policy recommendations are based on not enough data, or maybe even no data at all. Obviously, the world has moved forward a lot since then, but still a lot of decision-making is being made by experience and contacts and things that are more easier than creating fundamental, complex, deep analysis. So he got an idea, and he went to the Czech Technical University to get some help from data scientists, and they came up with how to actually make Gary come into existence. Can you tame global liquid complexity? Now we begin with big words. What does any of this mean? By global liquid complexity, we mean how complicated and complex the world is in terms of flows, in terms of processes, decision-making, governments, speaking or not speaking to the private sector, initiatives that are trying to establish more sustainable projects and ways of doing things. Everything is really, really complex, so how does one manage to do something about that? I'm going to start again with a little tale of two worlds. There's a world of global socioeconomic flows, and there's a world of political and social interactions. The world of global socioeconomic flows is commerce and movement and finance and anything that goes over borders that basically we can control, we can establish, we can think of new. Political and social, it's really difficult. We're dealing with international policy, we're dealing with domestic policy. Interactions are much more difficult, and the information is much more murky. It's basically a world of crisis and suspension and conflict. We don't know the future, we don't have control, and it feels like things are happening to us. Whereas the world of flows, it seems like a world of opportunity. Energy, services, data, aircrafts and ships aren't colliding, people are traveling. However, when the world of politics gets stuck or suspended, which happens all the time, it's something that we kind of know how to comprehend, know how to deal with. Obviously, a lot of the times there aren't many ways to deal with them and we struggle through, but it's something we understand. But what if the world of flows somehow got stuck? I think we got a pretty good glimpse of that during COVID and the war in Ukraine. We saw that global supply chains were getting stuck, communication, countries were looking inwards, looking for alternative ways of sourcing what they need. And it got really complicated. And there was a lot of trouble that we weren't prepared for, but we could have been. All right, here we go. What Gary has done, okay, first of all, who knows what a digital twin is? Who's heard of a digital twin? Fantastic. We have one person, which means I can spend a lot of time describing what it is. I'm going to use this sort of blank structure of the globe as our starting point. Let's add post. Let's add travel, any kind of travel, tourism, business travel, diplomatic, moving things from one place to another. I'm going to add some data. We're going to add supply chains. We're going to add some energy. I'm going to include in this also attempts at renewable energy, maybe even discussions and policies about renewable energy, sustainability, climate change. Money, obviously, money flows. We have international transfers. We have currency changes. I think money is self-explanatory. Migration, and maybe infrastructure, tourism, architecture, materials to build. And by this time in the presentation, I ran out of cool things to add on top of my globe, but I think you can imagine much and much more things that end up, that we can imagine under globalization and flows and processes. It's a bit of a headache, so let's go back to the initial structure. Because it's so complicated and complex, it makes things really difficult to understand, to sort of see where things are going, what they mean, what the implications are, and what might happen if this or if that, if people change their mind, if there is a war, if there is a pandemic or natural disasters. But people are clever, so we can create tools for ourselves to make things easier. So Gary decided to make a digital twin of the globalized world so that we can understand things better. And if you want to imagine what that is, imagine all those things that I showed to you and that I described, all the flows and processes that go across the globe, including decision-making, including regional frameworks, political frameworks, regulatory frameworks. And then with all that data, which is publicly sourced, so you have it from the World Bank, you have it from the UN, national statistics offices, national banks, all of that available data, if put together into one intelligent digital environment, can be used to actually aid in understanding, possibly managing, maybe even predicting or designing globalization or the future. This was a really cool imagery that I found on Canva, thanks to Canva, by the way, which kind of shows the data, and these 4 boxes are kind of symbolizing models. So what we do is we have all this information, all this data, but we also create models which are tested in centers to see if they do what they should, if they're predicting correctly, accurately, if they're interconnecting so that information from one model, which might be predicting the prices of different commodities, to another model, which might be predicting energy, as well as to another model, which might be simulating and creating scenarios of, let's say, political events that may happen and impact everything else. And those models intercommunicate with themselves. So that's what we say, is that we're pioneering the organic interconnection of leading-edge computing technologies and socioeconomic and political analysis. This digital twin really allows us to look into what's happening and be able to try to manage it. These are our missions: facilitating global interdisciplinary dialogue. The reason interdisciplinary is highlighted is because that is our approach. If you want to talk about the economy, you have to invite politics, you have to invite energy, you have to invite environment, defense. Everybody should be at this table because everything is interconnected. Advancing research and technology, obviously that is our passion. We are a nonprofit. We're not necessarily doing it for the money. We're doing it because it's really exciting and really cool. And using our digital twin for governments, for the private sector to help decision-making, understanding, predicting, planning. And we're democratizing data and AI. Currently, data and AI is really only accessible to those that understand it, that can handle it, or can afford it. There are not a lot of organizations, and certainly not governments and so on, that can just afford to pay giant companies for analysis. We want that to happen, because obviously a lot of those organizations, entities, governments are the ones that should be really well informed, and their decision-making should be backed by information. What makes us unique? Complexity. Obviously, I think I've explained that a little bit, that we're pretty complex. Speed. We've put this into this intelligent environment, and we've been building it for the last 7 years, so that we don't have to, when we get a question, choose what data we look into, how we're going to approach it. It's continuously updated into this environment as data is updated globally. And democratization of prices, I already said that. We want the right kind of organizations, entities to be able to afford it so that we don't end up in all these crises that I mentioned could happen. Services, I'm not even going to go through this. I think you can kind of imagine it, plus I'll bring in a lot of examples as we go. Just to show you different kinds of sectors that we can work with, or that we already are working with. It's really difficult for us. It's kind of like a burden as well as a pleasure that we are able to look at all sectors. It's really difficult to pitch. We can do anything. Sounds a bit dubious. So here are some examples. We can assess macroeconomic and geopolitical risks, identify opportunities, anticipate future changes, optimize supply chains, but in their entire complexity, so actually looking at each element, whether it's the actual logistical transport, looking into each piece of whatever is being transported, produced, the critical, in brackets, raw materials that are being used for each component, and where are they being sourced? Is our supply chain actually considering that each component is being sourced from countries that are not within the supply chain that we see? How rare is this raw material that we need? Who else is sourcing it? What trade deals are being done with that country? Should we expect those materials to be available to us next year, in 10 years? Forecast demand. Predict pricing trends. I'll show you this in a bit. We actually have a user interface for our predictive pricing tool of commodities. And scenario analysis, which is really important, especially when we talk about my background is in political science and globalization, so scenario analysis for me a lot of times means, what if there is a war between country X and country Y? What will that mean for global business? What will that mean for supply chains? What will that mean for future international relations? And the list just goes on. And if you have scenarios that are possible that can happen because of current global realities that we can see in complexity, we can plan for those. We can try to prevent them. This includes catastrophic or semi-catastrophic events in terms of climate change, or in terms of trade disruptions, or geopolitical risks. All right, let's start with our commodity price projection tool. As you can see, we haven't quite created really cool names for everything that we do, but if you have ideas, please message me. This is where you start. It's a dashboard. I've created the name Sustainable Finance Summit, because that's where we are. You choose which domain you want to look through. Which commodities do you want to see the prices of? So I've chosen energy, obviously. I've chosen the European Union as our region. And I've chosen, I believe, nickel, zinc, and propane. And I did this an hour ago. These are the current price predictions for the next almost year of these specific elements, of these commodities. And behind this is an insane amount of work. I think I might show you some of it. I don't want to take up too much time of it because there's more to show you, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Not after this, but like on WhatsApp or LinkedIn or something. Then we have Ideal, which is an interactive data environment for analyzing liabilities, vulnerabilities. We're currently focusing on the European Union and its member states and every other nation across the globe, but in the next few weeks we'll be expanding to having the focus on every nation in the world. It's a composite index. It has over 10,000 commodities. Basically every commodity that the EU trades with is in this index. It takes into account hundreds of things, but accessibility of the commodity on various markets, intra-EU trade, importance of the commodity for GDP, and so on. What do we mean by vulnerability? So what is the accessibility in other countries within Europe? What is our dependency? So if a country is trading 70% of this commodity with one partner, so it's not accessible anywhere else, it creates even higher vulnerability. Share of this commodity of all exports, exports, which sectors are using this commodity, and which are dependent on it, and to what extent. These are just some of the explanations of what we mean by vulnerability. Again, this is where you land. Let's go straight to import. This is an overall import vulnerability index for EU countries. So this, you can see, obviously, as it gets darker, that means the more vulnerable that country is. So this is overall vulnerability across commodities of each country in the EU in terms of import from outside of the European Union. You can choose a reporter, so I chose Czech Republic. What you see first is a list of the most vulnerable commodities that the Czech Republic imports. And that there's the list. You can click on data and see what the data behind it is. Then I've actually selected a specific commodity. And there's over 10,000 there. So I think I chose articles of zinc. I chose a partner, China. So this, if we get it from China, how vulnerable are we towards China not supplying that commodity maybe anymore, or supply chain disruption, so on. And it shows you exactly, and this all happens as you're clicking it. Maybe you wait 2 seconds, but I think it's still okay. And it always compares it to the EU. So how much is the EU generally vulnerable in this specific commodity, so articles of zinc, towards China. And you can see, obviously, over time, if it's gone up and down. And then you can look specifically at the years as well. So I think I looked at 2019. This is how comparison of EU reporters. Maybe this is what I showed you already before. And in that selected commodity. So this is import vulnerability of other outside countries for that commodity. Top 30 most vulnerable commodities that we import from China. Shows you right away. You can compare the commodities. So I think I selected, Germany in comparison. Again, this is just to generally show you, you don't have to really understand this. I'd be happy to answer any questions. This is the third user interface that we have, tool. I've selected digitalization. I could have selected environment or energy, but there was some glitch on my computer, and digitalization is very closely related to the green energy transition, which we're very much dealing with right now as our main topic. So I kept it. I'll just tell you two of the things: how developed the regions are in digital infrastructure and services. So what are the current conditions to be able to digitalize, and what the digitalization level is now, and how prepared is the region in terms of trends towards the digital transition. What are the capabilities of that country, of that specific region within that country, to actually be digitalized, complete the digital and green energy transition? This is 2014, and it's a heat map. You can see that we look directly at specific regions. So you actually can see the inconsistency of different regions in a single country and across Europe of how vulnerable they are towards the digital and green energy transition. And this is 2019. You can see that this has become, I feel like the weather presenter now. You can see that it's become, did I switch this around? That some of the regions have become darker, some are lighter. This all depends on how much they are capable of completing the digital transition and how much they already digitalized. Here, I'll mention this very quickly. This is an example of the difference between our analysis and maybe somebody else's analysis. So we saw that there's an inconsistency with what we came up with in Germany and what the European Commission and Eurostat regional yearbook saw. And we thought, okay, maybe our model is wrong. So we went into it and looked into it, what's going on? And the answer is that we actually added additional elements, including how prepared are those regions for further digitalization, which actually lowered how prepared Germany is generally. And we saw that the European Investment Bank actually had a similar ranking to what we saw in Germany, as opposed to what the European Commission saw. Again, social. You can see there's a little area that goes up here that's lighter, which means those are areas that are more able to complete the digital transition, are more prepared, or have already advanced in digitalization. And a lot of the times, these are areas where there are large cities, and it shows how inconsistent it is within a single country, that it's not even. We have 1 minute left, so I'm going to skip through about 100 slides because initially I was supposed to be one of 2 speakers, and eventually it was 30 minutes, then it was 20 minutes, so I prepared a lot of different slides in case I needed to take up more time. I'll tell you quickly that these slides are all about how, if we want to move towards a green energy transition, and for example, we're hoping on, let's say, using hydrogen, it sounds like a good idea, but if you look at the actual critical raw materials that are needed for transfer to using hydrogen, a lot of them are on the critical raw materials list. And a lot of us being able to transfer to, let's say, electric cars and electric infrastructure, we need a lot of these materials. But if we're dependent on countries such as China or Russia, obviously that's lower down a lot for very important reasons. This creates a big problem, but that's why we need to look at the intricate details of the supply chains and of the ability of, let's say, the EU, but anywhere in the world to actually complete these transitions. These are just some ways of how we show things and how vulnerable regions, this is, for example, how vulnerable we are towards the import of electrical machinery, and these are actually vulnerable regions, so the light, the orange and the red and the yellow, those are regions that are dependent on manufacturing industry. So there's like a double vulnerability there. Some of the lovely people that we work with, and I've completed my time with 50 seconds additionally, so thank you very much for listening.
Thanks. What an interesting presentation. You know, why don't you and I catch up later and you can dumb this down for me?
Yeah, no problem. I'll get it down to 2 minutes.
Thanks very much for that. We have last panel, and you might have noticed that I don't have my cards anymore because the moderator of our next panel is a man who needs no introduction. Colleague and a dear friend of mine, Julian Toth. And he's focusing on ESG in investing, but also he's very enthusiastic about gender balance in financial industry. So floor is yours, my friend.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Did I oversell you?
Okay. Oh. And that's it for today, guys. So, thanks, Karel. Can you hear me, by the way? Is this what it sounds like? Is this what it feels like, by the way, to be here? I already sit because I want to know what it feels like, and I will call you to this amazing stage one by one. But for anyone wondering that, hey, is the guy who's been running around here trying to organize this summit, when did he have time to prepare questions for this panel? Well, we'll find out. But luckily, I do have an amazing panel with really good speakers who I am now indirectly very inviting to the stage. So maybe we can actually start by Andrea, if you can come to the stage. So Andrea is the representative of the EIB, so the European Investment Group in the Czech Republic, or Czechia. EIB should update maybe to Czechia.
Let's do that.
Let's do that now.
Good afternoon.
First takeaway from this discussion. Then Traian, please join us here on the stage. Traian Urban, apologies. So Traian is the director of Innovation Hub East and also from the EIT Urban Mobility. I see you are already packing a bag. Exactly. That's good. You probably have, this is 1 hour panel, by the way. It's very high expectations, but it's okay. Then let's move to Silke Horáková, who is and has been a pioneer in impact investing, and she's the co-founder of Tilia Impact Ventures, and who I actually met today for the first time, and I'm really excited, so please join us on the panel. Then we have Emilia Mamajova, founder of ESPIRA Investments, also a very well-known female leader in finance, I could say, although you might not like it, but I have said it already. And then we have Tom Cironis as well, walking through the aisle like it's his wedding. Tom, please join us on the stage on the very other side, which actually is so far I will barely see you. But, and Tom is master chef from Startup Kitchen. We will need to probably explore that one because that's either you actually are kitchen of startups or a very small kitchen you just started up. So we will go through that and we'll find out. So yes, I'm actually really excited to be here, and I'm getting something from the studio that apparently this is the most important panel of the summit. Absolutely. I've been told. By far, I've been told by far it's the last panel of the day and of the summit. What's the energy like in the room? Is it great? Have you just spent all the last energy you just had? That was a stupid move. That's good to see. I mean, at the same time, we're all really sad, right? Because it is the last panel. It has been, I mean, it's been obviously a very full, busy week, and but at the same time, I'm actually really glad that I'm able to moderate at least one panel on a very important topic, which, as Karel already mentioned, is, I'm not going to call it even gender diversity, but it's actually exploring how we can empower, how we can create the environment or ecosystem where both genders and where female leaders can also strive, and we can actually see more improvement, more progress, and but this is both in innovation and finance. So we are trying to actually combine innovation and finance. And I think this panel is an amazing representation of that exactly, because we have people from investment funds, we have people who are from incubators and actually working with startups, so it's slightly the other side of the coin. We have EIB as well, which as an investor as well is representing the investment side, but even from bigger picture and more international perspective. So I am very excited to tap into this potential. I'm a little bit scared, to be honest, because I've been annoying the audio-visual guys for 5 days now, and I'm expecting some kind of auto-tune to my voice or something, but hopefully not, hopefully not. So, okay, two things, and then I mean, Karel already told you that I do talk a lot, but I was going to do like a secondary research to go through some data, and actually this topic is something I was working with before, so I could share some data, but let's do some quick primary research. So how many people here are from finance? Hands up. Okay, how many people from startups, innovation, you could say? Okay, very short hands, because I see like 3. Good. And how many of you think that we need to do a better job in female empowerment and supporting women leaders in these 2 sectors? So that's my research so far. That's good. Interesting. Good. So, and my aim for this panel is actually threefold, and we try to go through 3 rounds of questions. Let's see how it goes. I very much encourage you to ask questions to each other. I mean, this is not only me. Yeah, it will be actually great to share your knowledge and your own experiences as well, so definitely feel free to communicate. And essentially, just to maybe explain, I have 3 main objectives for this panel. So the first one is to explore what exactly is the current state, what is the status quo of the gender balance or the gender diversity in finance and in innovation in this region from your experience. The second thing is to explore some of the differences and similarities in gender diversity challenges between innovation, between startups and finance. And the third and most important, which I really want to spend the most time on, is to actually extract all your knowledge, combine it, and find some very, very practical solutions we can actually take as next steps and improve and fix the issue. So I think that's definitely enough from me. So let's move to the discussion. And I have a first question. I will actually start. I will start with Emilia. Just improvising here. So I just asked this question about gender diversity. And my first question is, what exactly is gender diversity? Because this is a term that is very often mentioned, and it might maybe mean something slightly different to all of you. But maybe let's start with Emilia. So from your perspective as an investor, how do you approach, and what exactly gender diversity means for you?
So gender diversity means that you have diverse voices at the table, at the decision-making phase. And our goal as ESPIRA, and maybe I will make a very brief intro, because ESPIRA is a private equity fund that invests in companies in Central Eastern Europe. And angle of our investment strategy is to support companies that have gender diverse leadership teams. And the idea comes more from diversity than purely gender diversity. It's because when you have multiple views, backgrounds of people, you come to better decisions, better investment decisions. Unfortunately, in this region, there's not that much multicultural, religious, or other diversity, so it ended up being more gender diversity than anything else. And based on a lot of research that was done before we started the fund, and when we actually explored what it means, some people concluded that if you have 1/4 of different gender or different viewpoint at the table, this is enough to make an impact. So that's what we have actually started with, and I can say that if you have less, you probably don't have a strong enough voice. If you have more, it's always better. So that's kind of our base rule. And in the SME segment, most of the management teams are 4 people. So if 1 woman out of 4 people in the top management is there, then it meets our criteria, I would say.
So you do try to define it very specifically in your investment strategy or decisions then?
Yes, but another aspect of that is that as an investor, we always have a board seat on a company.
Yeah.
So the strategic decisions are taken together with the management team, and then being 2 female co-founders, we bring additional diversity to the table. So
yeah.
The company has some, and then we bring it more. So I think that's kind of a double way.
Good. And I'll move quickly just on the same topic, on the actual definition or what it means in practice now. To Andrea, to you maybe, because EIB, you do have pretty robust policies internally, and I know EIB both and also EIF, social S, part of ESG is a big topic. So how do you perceive, or what exactly gender diversity or diversity means for EIB?
Thank you, Julian. I would maybe echo what Emilia just said on the diversity, but I would also add equality, an equal approach to the investments. Here, I think that speaking about where do we stand, of course, definitions you can read every time in the book, but the evidence is pretty based when you look at the figures, where the diversity is now and where the equality stands now. And we at the EIB and the EIF have pretty nice economic department who makes quite a lot of nice studies and surveys, and one of them echoes that it's still 13% of the pay gap that is between the female and male. And it's not only about the figure, but it's to say that these pay gaps, they are costly. Basically, the economic loss, which has been somehow measured, is approximately 270 billion euros within the European Union per year. And this is when we are speaking about these equalities and diversities. This is the way why we are speaking, because we want to overcome these gaps. And also why we are doing extra effort to go through the diversity is because we want to see much more of the women launching or starting their business, because it's really a shame that the share of the women-led enterprises is still quite low, and seeing much more of the success stories would create some peer pressure and can really influence much many in the field, among the new potential investors. So this is something to add on Emilia's.
So as part of EIB then, you actually do a survey where you try to convert gender imbalance or inequality to actual financial impacts.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I took some papers with me, because when I was preparing for the panel, I found some very nice figures, which was done by the EIF, and just to read out, because we are speaking about innovation and the survey and the findings from really like last year, it's fresh figures. They said that the majority of the VC teams are still male-dominated, and it's only 20% of females which are really partners.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
These are really like low figures, and maybe also to add some other, that the average female representation in the investment team of the surveyed VC firms is only 14.7%. I think these are still pretty alarming results. If you look, these are not the regional results; these are the EU results. So, so there is really like a plenty room to do, and I think that we are speaking today also because that we want to maybe brainstorm of what we can do together and how we can overcome this gap.
So, okay, so on that note, And I'm so glad you brought all these numbers. I feel like I should have done that. But I mean, sitting next to me, this is a mutual preparation here. On that note, maybe to go to you, Silke, because not only that you, Tilia Impact Ventures is, I think, still the only true impact investor in Czech Republic, but also one of very few in the region. But also you do have the wealth of experience over the years working with not only startup communities, but actually speaking to companies and seeing this ecosystem, how it was developing. So now seeing this, my quick research here, and also what Andrea mentioned with the numbers and what is the situation in the EU, does it bring any truth? Is this something you have observed as well?
Yeah, definitely, of course. I mean, Andrea already mentioned the numbers and I think they were European numbers, right?
EU-wide, yeah.
Yeah, European-wide, yeah. I also looked into the numbers because I think if you want to empower female entrepreneurs, they need capital to grow. So we have to look at the funding basis. And I think when we discuss the consequences or what we can do, that will be a major point. So if you look, and we belong to this ecosystem, so we're trying as an impact fund to target women as well. It is not exactly a KPI for us, but we have in our second fund 2 areas we are investing in. This is people and planet. And if you're talking about people, we want to bring them empowerment, healthcare, education, but for people which live in an inclusive and equitable society. And this is a bit broader, maybe, approach to diversity, because we are talking also about disadvantaged people here. But that's our approach. Looking at our portfolio from Tilia 1, which we just invested, well, the reality is we have a portfolio of 9 investments, and 3 of them are either women-led in 2 cases, very strong female entrepreneurs. One is a mixed founded team, so let's say 3 of 9, which is above average, but still I think there's a lot of space to develop. And if you look at this funding power of women from the VC perspective, there is an organization which is called European Women in VC, and they published last year a study and came up with even more negative numbers, I have to say. So the percentage of GPs in the VC industry in Europe was even lower than you mentioned, 15%, and the gunpowder they have to invest, 9%. And if you're talking about invested companies, that is really a tragedy, I would call it, because the number, and we're talking about 2021, which was a record number of money going into the VC sector, 1.8% went to female-led companies, startups. And I think it was 9.3% or 9.8% in mixed, and all the remainder, which is 89%, to male-only teams. So I think the situation is really, really bad, you know. So, and looking forward, I would say what happens now is also with the regulation coming a little bit more pressure to look at this as well. So the awareness is growing very much with the new regulation on disclosure in these areas. We as an impact fund, with our second fund, which we hope we will close in a month, here we commit to Article 9, which means for impact funds, it's regulated how you report these things, looking also at social KPIs. Specifically, we'll look at portfolio level at our portfolio companies in terms of pay differences, unadjusted gaps in pay, but also board and management diversity, because that's important.
No, I completely agree. And I just realized, by the way, when I opened the topic and the discussion, I spoke about finance and innovation as if those are 2 separate things. But actually, even here on the panel, we have investors who, in a way, represent finance, but you actually invest in innovations, right? Same for EIB, trying to find innovative investments and projects and companies. So let's actually merge them together, I think. And I will go to you, Traian, about, because you I mean, you now lead the East Incubator, but also you have been working in innovation strategy, working with companies, also SMEs over the years, also at the EIT, Urban Mobility, that's again working with ideas, right? Working with companies and innovative companies. Now, it would be interesting to get your view on not only on maybe gender diversity, but diversity overall. Has that been a big part of the discussions, or is it a big part of when you, as an incubator, you try to support the startups, you try to make them more successful, maybe more resilient, but also more innovative? Is gender a big question or a big topic in the discussions?
Yeah. Absolutely. Everybody is talking about some data, analysis, studies, numbers. So I will also a little bit.
Good.
So we made analysis of more than 7,000, almost 8,000 of startups.
Oh.
If I remember well, more than 600 were led by women. And we figure out by this study that the success rate or the success of the scale-ups led by women are much more higher than the average. So it's confirming somehow that the diversity, which was mentioned here, it's very important for startups to grow because you can see different perspectives or many perspectives, and you can play with this and achieve the objectives perhaps in different ways than startups or companies which they don't have so much insight or so much different perspectives from different angles. Regarding to EIT Urban Mobility, yes, we are working with many startups, and we have even targeted calls for startups led by women. So it's like Jumpstarter or Supernovas, so we are focusing on the women's. Also, we are rewarding in our normal calls. We are rewarding the startup which are led or co-led by some women in the management team or like founder, and it's basically our strategy to support or to reward this diversity.
So it's part of the strategy for the hub.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good. So that's starting to be more positive here. So going from the discussion about the status quo, which I mean we still need to improve and change, but already there's some things happening, and we will go through some more maybe tangible, practical aspects of that. But and I apologize, Tom. Now you're the last one here. I'm probably unconscious bias now that you're sitting on the other side, but you bring a really interesting perspective here as well, because I'm not very active member of the startup community here in Prague. We deal mainly with financial institutions, bigger banks and so on, but I know it's thriving and I know it's huge. I know your events and many other events are usually super well attended, and just from my network, I feel like startups and VCs, there's a huge culture here in Prague. So you meet a lot of founders, startups, innovators, and maybe if you can even explain actually what you do in the startup kitchen. But I actually want to hear your perspective as someone who speaks to a lot of startups, to a lot of founders. Can you see that the gender imbalance maybe and lack of diversity?
First of all, hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Second of all, yeah, what does Startup Kitchen do? It's a platform. We are a platform that connects first-time founders with the VC investors, and we help them with the first investment to deal with these term sheets, convertible loans, shareholder agreements, and so on. So we are a platform. We don't cook, and the reason why I mention this is that we were part of Mrs. Pekarová-Adamová business political delegation to Taiwan, and we were approached only by food tech accelerators, and they were asking us what kind of food we cook or if we are last mile delivery. So
for catering as well?
Or catering, yeah. We don't do catering. So yeah, that's what we do, and we do it via several ways. As you mentioned, events, networking, invite-only networking events, podcasts, educational content, blog articles, scouting, and so on and so on. And I believe we are one of the leading platforms here in V4 countries. And to your question, or I could use Silke's answer because I think Silke's answered this already. It's improving the state of female founders here in Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. I used to be part of Czech Founders Initiative, and there was this huge Excel sheet which is called Funding Failures and Exits, and it sums up all the investments, fundings, and failures from, I don't know, 90s, 95 or something like that, up to today. And there were 369 investments, and only 12 of them were into female-led startups, which is like 3.3% of all these investments, which is the bad thing. The good thing is that most of those 12 investments happened in past 4 years, which means it's really improving. And I think, or I believe, there are these platforms and communities such as, I don't know, Holkis Marketingu, which deserves
recognition
or support, or I don't know how to say it, but thanks to these initiatives and communities, the state is improving quite a lot.
Okay, good. So that is a nice closure to the first round. So we wanted to establish what exactly is the situation. I mean, we have heard some numbers. Not all of them, or actually most are fairly bad still, considering it's 2023, but we also hear and see some examples and some changes already. Good. So, and we already heard some more practical examples of what has worked, such as, for example, Holkis Marketingu also, for example, as you at the incubator, you already try to somehow integrate the diversity as one of the main metrics. It would be interesting to maybe in this second round now to explore a bit more some of these practical things you can do, practical solutions maybe. Emilia, I know that gender, as you mentioned, is actually one of the main lenses or one of the main aspects in your investment strategy, right?
Well, the main aspects are as for any fund, so it has to be a good investment case in the first place. And then on top of it, we prefer if company has a diversity because it means they understand the benefits of it and statistically should perform better. So that's the main thesis.
And so what does it look like in practice, by the way? So you actually, when you were investing with a fund, you went through different companies, you were actually analyzing and assessing what kind of board they have, as you mentioned, based on your criteria. And then is it also some kind of dialogue or some kind of discussion you try to explain the benefits of that? Or like how does it actually look like in practice to integrate diversity in your investment decision? What's the business case here?
Well, since this is our strategy, we get a lot of pipeline that already meets this criteria. And then quite often we see companies that the advisors will say, well, they don't have diversity there, but maybe you want to have a look at it. And they don't see diversity because there's no female co-owners, but there still might be quite strong, influential women in the top management team. So once we start digging more into the company's information and analyzing their financials, we find out, for example, that a CFO is a woman, COO is a woman, and all of a sudden the picture looks different than what the advisors see on the surface when they are just shopping a deal around the market. So I would say that we prefer to do the screening ourselves, so we don't like others to screen for us whether it's diverse or not before they send us the deal, because they quite often don't understand how we look at it. So it's not so simplistic as some people think. And then these are companies that already have diversity. It means they already recognize the value of this cognitive diversity in decision making or running the business, and we know that it brings higher employee satisfaction, higher customer satisfaction if you have this more inclusive, diverse culture. So we don't have to impose anything on them. We don't bring anything that they have to change all of a sudden just because we are their investor. We more try to support them in some initiatives they have and reinforce what already works in the company. And what we've seen in many of the cases is even companies we don't invest, and there have been hundreds, if we spend some time with them and we recognize certain patterns that started to emerge over time, we try to help them even though we don't invest, in kind of giving them a little bit of kind of guidance how they can be more inclusive, because quite often we see businesses where women will, for example, have an office manager or like a director assistant role and something similar like that. And in reality, it's a COO role or it's a CFO role. We acquired a company where there was a head accountant, and when we did due diligence, we realized she was head of HR, she was head of legal, she was a CFO. And there was nobody else. She was number 2 in the company, but she was called accountant because between the founder and the rest of the team, there was nobody else. So I think bringing up these women, recognizing their roles for what they are, and giving them that confidence. We were on the verge of firing this woman already before we invested because we thought she was just an absolute chaos, you know, like it was just so much mess in everything. And then we realized that with a little bit of guidance, a little bit of attention, she made amazing progress, and she became a huge asset for the company. But it was not recognized earlier. So I think we realized that not just investing into diverse companies is a value add, but then also recognizing these women, giving them the opportunity to grow, to go for trainings, to develop. And what turned out even more interesting is that a lot of companies we targeted, and we didn't end up investing. And these were quite successful companies, cash generative. The female founders or co-owners, they accumulated some wealth, and they were not investing that wealth or not knowing what to do with that. So we had a company that had 4 million euros on a current account, female founder, and she just said, I'm too busy with my business, I don't have time to deal with this, I don't trust the financial advisors. So we became their investments at the end because we invested into companies where they co-invested with us. So we led them also through a process of giving them a little bit more investment literacy, how to become an investor and invest along us into a company and educate them in another aspects of their business, not just their everyday operations. So it's been a kind of an evolving thing that didn't end up with just we invest into diversity.
And you touched on quite a few very important points, such as engagement, guidance, actually, and you know when you mentioned imposing not only targets or quotas, but actually setting conditions of these, you know, external conditions to the fund is not really your approach and might actually not work that much. So you're going more from the bottom, trying to build that, create that support. So that's a really, really specific, interesting example. And by the way, what is also interesting is that essentially what we're discussing here is as in ESG in practice, but we don't really need to call it that. And I will move to you, Silke, because what maybe not all the people know, impact investing actually has fairly strict methodology, right? It's you need to focus on investments and projects which have measurable positive impact.
Exactly.
And so I would actually ask you, maybe if you can for 1-2 minutes just explain what impact investing exactly is, because I don't think everyone knows. And maybe just to follow up on what Emilia said as well, how do you approach, for example, this gender, I wouldn't say indicator, but gender topic in your methodologies? Like what does it actually look like in practice when you make decisions?
Right. So let's start with kind of definition here. To make it short, because I mean it's a broad topic, but there are 3 criteria which are characteristic for impact investing. 2 of them are pretty clear. One is financial return, as any other financial investor would do, and then it's the intentionality of the investor to do something good for the society through this investment. And the 3rd point is very important, and it's the accountability for impact, which means measuring the impact. We measure the impact, and by measuring it, we have the chance to manage the impact as well. We work always with our investee companies on their impact strategy as well, besides their business strategy, and normally that goes hand in hand. But it has, for example, it appears as an extra strategy in our investment documents. And we look at their potential to make really systemic change here and how to get there. So we help them, we support them a lot in this. So that's the first part of the question for the definition. And with gender diversity, as I mentioned, we have it in our, I mean, one important difference between this ESG approach, which mainly through all the regulation it will bring, aims at minimizing our negative impact on the world and our stakeholders in what we are doing, right? So it's more about minimizing negative effects. And impact investing goes one step further. Impact investing is looking at positive solutions for these problems. And this is also true with gender diversity. So we are looking for projects which bring a change, actual change. Just to give you 2 examples, we have looked at a project from, actually they're both from Poland. One is called Impact, which is a kind of mentoring platform, a huge network which works on a business model which helps women to grow in their professional career. That would be one example. Or we look to invest, which we really did, in a venture in Poland, an exciting female founder who experienced the problem she was solving then herself. The problem was really when the day she learned she was accepted at Harvard for her second part of the studies, she also realized she is pregnant. And we all know this is still a major problem, how you compromise between parenting and childcare and your career. And so she came up with a solution, which is in early child care and preschool education, let's call it. But it's a business model which allows women to start micro schools and to empower them to start their own business, hereby also combining parenting with career, and for the rest of the mothers to go early back and have their career. So I think we are looking more for the solutions in our investment strategy, aside of the ESG policy, which I already commented, which we will introduce in our second fund. That means following some criteria on our portfolio level.
Okay, so that is really a practical approach as well. And thanks for sharing the example. And I mean, if anyone has more examples like that, I think it's really important to share to showcase some of the good things happening already.
And if I may add something, please, Julian, I think the other thing is also important, and it concerns all of us in kind of role models, let's call it, to go out and talk to women. My colleague was doing it in a conference for women in tech. Next week I will talk on a conference which is celebrating women leaders, and then there's a kind of award for female entrepreneurs. I took over Patronage. So we are trying to engage in this and to promoting this through awareness as well. And I think it's also an important part.
If I can add to it, I think it's absolutely important, these role models, because these female entrepreneurs, even if they are already successful, they quite often have low self-confidence.
Yes.
They don't dare to try more than they have. And they need this encouragement from the outside to actually try for higher goals that they even want to achieve, but they are not feeling confident. And I'll give you an example of one lady that we were trying to invest in that didn't work out at the end. But she had a services company and was selling a distribution business. And she always dreamed of having her own production. But she's in her almost 60s. And she said, like, I'm not going to start a business. Now I should think of succession. And we spoke about an example of some entrepreneur in Slovakia who started a construction company when he was over 50 and built it into a huge business, exited successfully. And then a few months later, she started that. And she said, you know, when you told me the guy, I looked him up and I realized he was not that much younger than me. And yeah, I can do it. So she actually went for it. And yes, it was a male role model, but even for her, it was the age limit that she had. But for a lot of women, it's like they don't have other successful female founders in their circle, so they don't know to who to compare their everyday life and how they're going to manage. And it's much more difficult. So I think connecting these women, building a network around them, and giving them access to other women who are in similar situation makes a huge, huge difference.
Definitely huge impact. There's also, and we will actually explore some of these, whether there are any fora or any platforms like that, because, I mean, even for me, this is something I'm learning more about. And but for my, maybe like a quick, not even anecdote, but it actually very much resonates what you're saying, Emilia, because in my previous job, I was working for a big investment company, international and global, and I was in this unique position where my direct, immediate manager was a very capable female leader. Her boss as well, and also the head of the entire department sitting in New York was actually also incredibly capable woman. And it was quite interesting to see what was the impact, or maybe probably direct and indirect impact as well on all my female colleagues. It was basically like an inspiration and mentor on daily basis they could see. And they also saw them progressing, right, from when they were, let's say, mid-managers to actually progressing to the director roles. So definitely these examples in different situations are, I think, one of the most powerful, in my opinion, one of the most powerful role models and supports. But maybe, Traian, to go to you, because incubator. So you actually have startups as members trying to, as I said, trying to support them in innovations, but actually build them or maybe help them with the business case and so on. So what does it actually look like in practice here when you want to, what can you actually do as the director of incubator practically to, I'm not trying to make sure to ensure the gender balance, but to use it as an opportunity. And also maybe on top of that, because we keep talking about startups and founders and the company level, but let's also talk about the product level. How that gender diversity can actually be reflected in products and services these companies create.
Yeah. So I think I will continue what was told here. So I think a very important thing to support this diversity is to offer, for example, targeted calls, or to open it with clear target for some group of people which can have some disadvantage in the market or something. So make it like accessible for them, and give them the resources. Give them the resources, or it can be the network. It can be also mentoring programs. Support to grow, and other activities they can open them the door for the next steps. After, of course, for us, it's very important to provide them funding for the project or for the ideas to develop this idea. Because if you don't have access to the money, or resources generally, it's impossible almost to develop what you dream of. And the third thing, I would say, to foster an inclusive and supportive environment, because if you don't do that, so it's very difficult for women to perhaps do this next step and to grow. We heard the examples just mentioned. We have many of them. So I would say if you prepare the environment, if to foster the women to do something, I think you are helping them to make the step, and you are showing the way and the fact that it's possible for them. And regarding to the, you were asking about the products, etc. So I think the design thinking, inclusive thinking, thinking about the product and services from different perspectives to involve different patterns in the products and the service. It's also one of the aim of the diverse teams. So I think if you have the diverse team, you have much more easier way to achieve this design or alternative design thinking on the products and services.
That's exactly what I was trying to go at as well, is that it's interesting how it can be reflected, because those products, I mean, there's certain bias as well if it's designed by, for example, only men, how it can actually be used. Okay, good. And now going to full circle now to close with EIB, but to the point that Emilia mentioned, by the way, because one of the benefits for you is that you are a small fund, and I think maybe for Silke as well. So you are more flexible, and you can actually engage so well, with your portfolio companies, and you can have these discussions, maybe in smaller groups. But for EIB, that's a big organization. There are probably some bigger policies or approaches on how to tackle some of these topics. So what are some of the approaches you are taking as an institution internally? For example, are there any quotas imposed? Or
Let's not call them quotas. Let's call them strategies. But no, no. I know what you mean. But first of all, we are speaking now about the EIB, but also both on the EIF, which is most relevant for the VC discussion here. Indeed, we are pretty much present also in this segment of the support for the female empowerment or economic investments of the female-led firms. But of course, since we are big institutions, we can't do this directly. But that's why we have our partners on the financial markets, and these are either commercial banks or financial institutions like funds that we either provide credit lines, or we provide the guarantees, or we invest into the funds. And I'm very happy that ESPIRA fund is one of our great examples in the region. And this was, I think, one of the breakthrough operation or the transaction which has been done on our side, supporting in the region, and happy to see all of the nice results. But speaking, yes, about the quotas or about some strategies, conditions, even though at the beginning of our panel, I think that we were a bit going too pessimistic about how the figures are, but let's really look up on where do we want to head up. And the new program that we are also implementing, and especially which is implemented by the European Investment Fund in these regards, so-called InvestEU, has a very specific female strategy. And this one is even called a gender-smart criteria that we are implementing into our, or the EIF is implementing into their operation. And this is the way how you would basically implement all the way how you want to see the environment to be in the future. And there are basically two conditions that we are, or the EIF is assessing these investments. One of them is that at least 1/3 of the management board should be represented by female representative, and the other one is that either investment committee or senior investment team should be at least 40% represented by women. And we are not setting these targets or the ratios just because to make the artificial quotas, but because there is really like strong evidence behind that within this diversity approach, for instance, female partners or investment committee members, they can assess much better, for instance, on the green agenda. We learned that female-led teams or female representatives can much better go with their decisions on the just transition or on the energy savings. You know, there would be certain elements which are, at the end of the day, helping on the quality decisions of the investment as such. So it's not only artificial to put or to achieve some quality rules, but it's really about creating the impact. And I think that I would stop here to
Interesting. So this is a very powerful research, by the way.
And I really encourage all of you who are interested in the topic to go either on the EIB or EIF webpage to learn a bit more, because I was myself surprised to go through these nice and interesting conclusions and recommendations.
I would maybe add to it, because when we were raising the fund, to some people it might have seemed like some social initiative, but it was never social initiative. Like, of course, we like to support women, and that's something what maybe personally drives us in what we do every day. But behind that is an absolutely commercial interest, and that is based on the fact that we're sourcing the companies that other funds that don't have female investment professionals don't approach, because they don't have access to them, they don't have network, they don't know of them. So we're using this kind of competitive advantage of having a different network for sourcing deals. So the assumption was we will find companies the others don't see. And then also, we know that this diversity works in practice. So we're already going into companies that have this diversity and are therefore in a good position to achieve better than average results. So it's absolutely purely commercially based.
Yeah.
There's nothing kind of
it's just
like a charity kind of a fund or something like that. Yeah.
That's actually essentially what I'm trying to point out as well, because I mean same for EIF, but you are still investors. I mean, value-based investors. I mean, yes, and looking for impact, but still with certain vision to make some returns. And so essentially we are trying to, what we're describing here or highlighting is the business case of this. Good, but let's actually now look at some practical solutions. Also, I would just remind you that there's Slido. If I can get a Slido QR on the screen. No, but hey, listen, there is, sorry. Good. But also there's a microphone here. I think Linda can check it back now to people. So if there's any questions here, please feel free to ask anytime now. I'm looking at Ciprian, because I asked a question at your panel. And wow, no pressure.
Naturally.
Yes, please.
Anyone wants this mic?
Oh.
I have a question for Silke. You mentioned a bit about how impact investment works, etc. Would you consider, not just you, but the impact investment ecosystem, investing more into businesses that, or NGOs even, that work at the basis of educating a new generation of not just women leaders, but a new generation of entrepreneurs in the end. Because what happens, not just in Romania, but I think across the board, is that companies that don't really offer the good numbers, especially in education, rarely get investment. So can we get to what is the next level, and how much more risk could you put in such an investment?
Well, thank you for a question, because I actually wanted to come up with this point. When we are talking about measures, I think we have to look at different levels, and that starts much earlier than the girls becoming women and have all these problems with self-confidence and all this stuff. There is a long way before that, and I think we have to look at education. And independent of gender, I think if we bring in the schools, or not only schools, but in the general education system, much more this technology approach, STEM education, business-oriented orientation, and don't make it so much a difference between genders. I think that will help a lot. So I think educating the future females, not only females, of course, but bring them close to tech at an early stage helps a lot to overcome all the barriers we are working with right now. So I think it's crucial, and it's one of our investment pillars, columns, and we go willingly into education. Of course, business models around this is difficult to find, but we did, as I mentioned the example before, which is early child education, bringing all these values in. And just one point, we wouldn't go into NGOs. We would still look for growing businesses. So looking for working business models in the field of education, but very important to resolve diversity in the future.
And Traian, you wanted to react as well?
The education is very important, and this is why EIT Urban Mobility, we are not just focusing on the startups, but we are also cooperating with very high-level universities in all Europe, and we are co-financing master program schools, PhD programs, and we have also Competence Hub, which is financing the courses for professionals. So the education and the knowledge, it's very important in our ecosystem, and this is something what we see a lot of connected with the startups, but also with the big businesses and also with the cities, because we need to take together the KTH triangle to be successful.
Very good. So already exploring some of the solutions and some of the things that we could be doing. And I saw, Tomáš, you had a question.
I don't know if it works, yeah.
It should be
working. I think it does, yeah. Hello, Tomáš Babáček, Verdian Consulting. I was wondering about your opinion about the following. There's now an initiative, it's called Žebříček udržitelnosti. It aims to popularize ESG in Czechia. It's organized by Economia and the Confederation of Industry and Trade. And we've been going through ESG reports and strategies of companies in Czechia, and I realized something I felt before, but I realized materially only now, that in most of the companies that send their strategies and reports, it is women that are in charge of ESG agenda in those companies. And I was wondering about your opinion, whether this is a positive sign or a negative one. How do you feel about it? I have mixed feelings about it. I know it doesn't directly concern with investment, but I think it has to do with our ability to grasp the complexity of ESG matters. Is this a positive sign of involving women that may have, in some ways, better ability to grasp the complexities, or is it a negative sign, meaning that they are in charge of agenda that is still not impactful enough in the organizations? How would you see it? Thank you.
Who wants to take it proactively?
I would just echo that if the mic is working. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. I didn't hear myself properly. No, I would just say that it's, I think, the very positive sign and approach that women are in these positions, because as I was saying, even the evidence that we have in the bank from our service really clearly says that topics like climate change, like innovations, this is the field, these are the sectors where female leaders or firms led by women are really feeling not only comfortable, but they are making much better outcomes or achieving much better results. So I would say that I would not be surprised that it would be the trend also for the future. I don't know what the rest of the panel believes.
Anyone wants to add anything?
Maybe it's not surprising, because I think maybe it's a little bit of a stereotype, but it is statistically probably significant that women more often are more community-oriented and more caring about the education of the children, about what's happening in the society. That was also seen in Africa with a lot of microfinance loans, where women who obtained this microfinance were able to develop whole community, send the kids to school, and basically uplift the whole village through that. And I think it transforms into women caring maybe about these topics, or maybe thinking about these topics more. But I would see it as a positive if more men came into these ESG roles going forward, yeah, because it's more natural probably for women.
And
I mean, this is not only in the ESG area. If you look at if you look at our pipeline, and we are quite sector agnostic. I mean, 21% we had deal flow from female-founded companies, startups. If you look at what they're active in, this is education, this is mental health quite a lot. It's very rarely deep tech, it's very rarely green tech. So we have still to struggle in this society in general with this gender, whatever it is. And I think it needs a bit generations to overcome this. And ESG is also kind of soft things at the moment being seen from the management side, from companies, unfortunately. But let's hope this is going to change. And I can imagine in the future, if this becomes such a major thing in these company structures, in an important management position, a man will take it over. Well, anyway.
Good, and I see Ciprian looking at me with the microphone.
I don't have a question, I have a policy solution from Romania.
Wow.
This is great, and we exactly are in the solutions round, please.
Yeah, that's
share.
my job. And it comes from my wife, so that's even better.
Okay, is this some kind of political campaign here?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. She's an MP, so definitely. Now, one law that she just passed is built on another law that is a bit older, not hers. Which allows for mothers to have more time to build their career. You can also sell it like that. Yeah. And it's about the leave of, I don't know, parental leave, let's call it, right? And Romania and Sweden are two of the most progressive countries in the world. In Romania, you can take 2 years with 85% of your net income. Yeah. 1 year or 2 years. I spent 2 years in this. And now the new law allows for both parents to say, we will take 6 months together. Now, this is a policy solution, the first one, which allows for men, fathers, to also take 1 or 2 years. This is a policy solution, and we don't have enough data yet, but we see some results that in the past 8 years has actually supported the way women invest their time as mothers, as young mothers, in startups. Because having a kid is like having a startup, okay?
But you are talking about employees, no? And not about the
it's about
the
income,
like
not
for their...
So the people, you can take 1 or 2 years, and you will get 85% net from your income, not salary. You can get income from rents, you can get income from whatever, like stocks, whatever, it doesn't matter. So it's not about employees. If you're an employed or not, it doesn't matter necessarily. If you have income in the past 12 years.
Yeah, if you want to start your own startup, it will be more complicated, I imagine, or different story.
Yeah, there's always somebody that says it's not good enough, which is true.
It's me.
So this is one policy solution that actually supports the role that women, or gives them more time than they would usually have, whilst in Europe most men don't take up this role because of policy gaps. So
it's and it's may not be perfect, but it's interesting to hear that there's new policy and government solutions coming from the government side as well. And this is one of the aspects I wanted to explore too. Is different actors in the ecosystem and how can they actually contribute to the solutions. Two things here. First of all, I see that we have a few more seconds to go, but me as one of the organizers of this summit, I'm going to ignore that. And we're going, and we'll have 2-3 more minutes. It's Friday after all, so do you have any other place to go? We actually have one interesting question. It's an important question because this is a question on Slido here that gets asked very often. And it's a bit controversial in a way. I mean, it's in discussions, especially in big corporations and large companies, but important to explore as well. So do you see any downside of the gender diversity journey, especially in terms of quota on women being promoted to management positions, or any potential impact on corporate culture? Who would want to touch on that?
Well, I would like to comment on this because I saw the question and I was thinking about it. I'm German by origin, so this was introduced in Germany years ago, and it was a big controversial discussion. And I think we should also look at examples, what happens around us. It was an interesting discussion to the point nobody wants to be the quota woman, right? So if I'm somewhere elected or promoted because of a quota, I feel very much embarrassed. On the other side, it was introduced for large quoted companies. They have now a kind of quota for women for their boards. It brought a change. So I still have mixed feelings about it because I don't want to be it myself, as I said. But on the other side, to some extent, it really brought a change and a substantial one. So I think I would really vote for it if it's at some areas only where we expect to see a demonstrative effect, So mixed feelings, but that's my opinion.
The same for me. I would say the objective is to change the thinking of the society in general.
Yeah.
But I agree completely. It can be dangerous. There are many disadvantages also. So, yeah, it's complicated.
Yes.
You want to add anything?
No, just to say that we have to be really careful because of the impact.
Yeah, well, it's closely linked to what we discussed before, right? About the mentors and leaders and actually seeing some role models and examples, which needs to be genuine and true to be followed, I think. Okay, good. So I'm going to recognize this big red clock here. But maybe just to close, yes.
Can I have one just additional, because you were asking about the products and maybe also quick question to Silke and Emilia and maybe also to the gentlemen colleagues, because we were discussing about what we can do and whether this change needs also to bring some new products. And this is something that when I was preparing also for panel, I was asking myself, do we really need to have from the investment point of view to have a new products like new guarantees or something specific? And what was really surprising when I found in my preparation was that perhaps something like gender bonds could be introduced, to the market. But I know that we are running out of the time, but I was super curious to hear also your opinion, whether you believe that the investment world would really need to have something specific in terms, besides of the policies and quotas, I mean, like some special instrument that how we can boost the investments. Because the bonds I really like, I have to say, but what's your opinion?
Well, I don't have the answers, but I found the numbers so depressing, especially for our region, There was one outlier, and I think we should look around what works and why. Sometimes these solutions might be surprising, coming from countries you wouldn't expect. So guess what was the outlier in Central and Eastern Europe, where we have overall 6% of GBs female in VC funds? What was the outlier? And I'm talking about funds of size more than 25 million, according to the study I quoted earlier. Which country was the outlier? What would be your guess in Central and Eastern Europe? Cyprian, what do you think? Which one was the outlier? Bulgaria, exactly. Yes. Who would expect it? They have 27% of GPs and funds talking about size, more than 25 million under management, 27% female. So they must do something different than we. So let's have a look at this. They have also a vibrant IT system, IT startup system where female are more represented than in other countries. So
I would add another one example of what has shown to work in private equity community, because in private equity, around 10% of decision makers, senior investment professionals are women, which is a very low number. And a few years ago, like 4 years ago, it was only 6%. But there is already a growth from 6 to 10. These are specifically data for UK. And the kind of credit goes a lot to Level 20, which is like an organization started by 12 very senior private equity women based in UK in funds, private equity funds. And they developed a community around whole Europe. So there's Level 20 organization in many Western European countries. In Central Europe, unfortunately, only in Poland. They have currently 4,000 members. And what they do is they actually mentor junior women in private equity by more senior women. They organize networking events. Basically, it's giving them a career path, giving them role models of other women in the same industry, which is not very typical for women. And they have achieved already, thanks to that, probably there are other factors as well, but it's quite a significant progress from 6 to 10, 11% in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. So, but coming back to your question, I think it needs really extra money, public money to support female-founded funds.
And having male mentors for junior female like investment professionals has worked also very positively for these senior private equity people, because they see what these women are going through in a different level, because it's a mentoring kind of an intimate setting. It's not like being in a meeting where there's other people. So they understand what the issues are with the culture, with the working time, with the home office and all of this stuff, and they can think from different perspective when they run their private equity business. So these women don't drop out from the junior mid-level positions, but they really get to a more senior role in the organization.
Yeah, and it's very direct mentorship as well, as in very like one-to-one support. I saw Ciprian looking at me as you maybe had one more question, but I'm actually afraid they're going to shut the lights soon, so we'll wrap up. But maybe just to close the discussion, I would ask you, and I will start with you, Tom, to maybe in just 1, 2, 3 sentences, to tell me maybe what is one thing you can do. You can do personally in your position, in your role. What's one thing you could do to? You want to go last?
No. Do you have any easier question?
Let me check. Let me check.
What we can do? Like,
is your platform, for example? Your platform.
Yeah. I think I have an answer. I like the example that Patricia said. Emilia, sorry. Emilia said about those. We saw a lot of startups where there are male founders. However, on these COO roles, there are this type of woman who takes care of everything, and they are actually those who are running the business, running the job. Yep. It's like if you saw a MASH, TV show MASH, they are the radar of the startup. And what would help really, and what we are trying to do with Startup Kitchen, is to change the policy here, or to bring ESOP here into Czech Republic, because then the VC fund doesn't have to look necessarily only onto the female founders, however, on the ESOP policy of the startup, because if there are these COO positions that kind of can't leave the startup, then they deserve equity as well, and then we have kind of female founder as well. So that would be my closing remarks.
Really good. Thank you so much. Yeah. We can maybe go one by one, if that's okay. 2 sentences, Emilia. You in your role, what you can do.
I think we're already doing on so many different fronts things. So sure. I think maybe figuring out a way to scale it, because it's still on a micro level. So finding a model where you can reach out to more people.
Such as, for example, using big platforms. like Tom's, which is already has so many innovators.
Because we have certain know-how we accumulated through work with these companies, but it's still this limited number of companies we can spend time with. So
I agree completely. Scaling up, really good, really important point. Silke, to you.
Yes, I mean, we are looking for solutions to invest in, so business model based. And that is in education, and that is in women empowerment. That's what I would say.
That's good. Thank you. Traian?
I think support generally and provide good information, because I have very good experience, for example, from Israel. They don't think locally, the Israeli startup. So it means in Czech Republic or in Slovakia or in the region, basically, when somebody is founding the startups, he's thinking, we have this market, Prague, or a little bit cities around. But I think speaking with them and trying to motivate them to see the world, to see at least the Europe, I think it's very important.
Thank you. And Andrea?
Speaking class is always very difficult because everything was said, but on my personal note, I think that connecting the dots, it's the most important, because there are so many things happening with us in our headquarters and so many amazing things happening here in the market. And sometimes, you know, the community or the other way around doesn't know the information, what is happening. So I think my personal role would be to maybe help even much better to mitigate this gap.
Yep. Thank you very much. Good. So only 10 minutes over. This is a really important topic which deserves even more time. And so I'm glad we left it for the end for a very important closure here. So good. Thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you, Tom, Emilia, Silke, Traian, Andrea. Thank you to all of you here in the audience and for asking questions. And should I wrap up the whole thing? So maybe if you just give me quick minute. So this is the last panel of the, not only of today, but of the 5-day summit, as you noticed. And so I would like to thank, I mean, this is going to be a bit cliche, I guess, but I mean, I think that is the most important thing to say here is thank you. But thank you to every single one of you here, the audience, people online, people in our team as well, panelists, speakers, people who presented, even the hotel staff here who have been looking after us over the 5 years, 5 days. 5 years would be incredibly expensive. So let's stick to 5 days. But because it's actually every single of these groups and of these people and teams I mentioned, I think made this year's summit a success. So that's really good. And it has been 5 days of discussions, which is not short. I'm personally pretty tired, to be honest, but in a good way. And it has been panel discussions, roundtables, presentations, networking, and everything. And to be honest, I mean, it just shows you how much there is to talk about sustainable finance. And I'm glad that we can spend 5 days of having discussions about these topics and different angles. And that's exactly what we try to do with this summit. Some of you came here for more days, maybe for 1, some came for 4. And the pattern, or what we try to do, is to explore sustainable finance from different angles, to do like a 360 big picture view, from innovation, energy, banking, and different sides. And so I really hope you learned new things. I hope you met some interesting people. I hope you, same as us, recognize the importance and urgency of these topics. And there's one thing maybe you notice here in this summit. And the thing is that there's actually no tickets, because this is not a commercial project. We're not really trying to make money. Actually, it's costing money as well. And that's fine, because this is a passion project. This is something we, as ISFC, International Sustainable Finance Center, that's exactly why we exist, why we started with Linda, is to support this discourse, this discussion, create opportunities for people to meet, to share knowledge, to accelerate this discussion, but to accelerate practice of sustainability in business, finance, innovation, and so on. And one more cliche to say here, because this is such a big event and so much organization, and because it is not a commercial project, it would not be possible without the partners. And I mentioned that in the beginning on Monday. I'd like to say it again. But I'd like to say one thing here, because when we say partners, you've all seen these logos, big banks and big companies supporting the summit. But we don't talk to companies. We talk to people at these companies. We talk to our partners we know personally, we have relationships with. And that's, to me, by the way, this is something amazing to see the direct support of these people. And I'm looking, for example, Gabriel Maroshi from Erste. Not only that you joined the discussion, you actually had so many questions during panel discussions. You've been here for a couple of days supporting us directly. Same thing for many, many other partners from Andrea, from EIB as well. And I could go probably through all of them, but let's not spend too much time on this. But we are very, very grateful for these relationships, for the support you've been showing also. And it's very clearly we have these synergies, and also we share the values and that vision that we actually want to improve this region. So I hope we also contributed to that. And one equally important group to thank is our colleagues from ISFC. So I would like to maybe now actually name every single one of them, if that's okay with you. So this is a pretty big endeavor, by the way, to organize this summit. Also before, to plan it, and also to be here during and make sure that everything is running quite well. So first of all, I'd like to thank Linda Zaylin, our CEO, for the leadership, ambition. And well, for the vision, by the way, because let's be honest, it was her idea to have a 5-day summit, but that's okay. It's popular summit though, so that's good. So thanks to Linda for everything, and to also, well, thanks to Karel, not only for leading today's agenda, but also doing so much behind the scenes that it's actually amazing how many things there are to do. I mean, you probably can imagine. But for running the summit here, helping with pretty much everything from leadership to every single detail, and making sure everything's working. So Karel as well. Very good. Then I really hope you liked our... Are you telling me the names? I have all the names. Hope you liked our branding, communications, the whole marketing about the summit. How is it presented? Because that's all thanks to our Lucia at the back as well. Lucy, thank you so much. Our head of communications. I'm so glad you're clapping, by the way. I didn't prepare that, but it's amazing. You're going with this. That's great. No worries. This is, by the way, just the last page I have, but I want to go through everything I have written down today. Good. Then also, thank you so much to Reka and Michal, who also, again, behind the scenes, there's so many little things that can go wrong to actually coordinate everything from talking to the hotel staff to prepare Twitter, social media, talking to all the speakers, making sure everyone is where they should be. So thank you so much to Reka and Michal as well for all the support. Very good. Then thank you to Paula. Paula, where are you? Good. So Paula, our colleague as well, who came from Bratislava to be here for 5 days to help with everything from moderation to running a roundtable discussion and pretty much every other aspect, spending so much time here with us. So thank you so much, Paula, as well. Very good. And Jan Dobiasz, who's head of the summit, and who... Is Jan here? Jan? Yes, nice. I mean, sitting at the back. Guys, I should have told you to sit in the front, but this is my fault. Jan, you may have seen Jan running around for pretty much 24/7, non-stop here, making sure, again, that every single thing is set up properly. And there's a lot of things to set up, and this is all Jan's doing. Then there's also Jan Hayek, our colleague, who, by the way, I realized today, you're probably the only person who actually working on the project. So we have this 5-day summit, and actually someone is still doing all the work we do as an organization while running this. So thank you so much for making sure that everything is done while we spend all the time here. So thank you, Jan, as well. Cool. And now, just to close, and thank you also to all of our interns. And you met our interns at the reception, mainly. Hopefully maybe over coffee as well. You actually spoke to them, maybe made new friends. So thank you so much to all the interns, Laura, Anna, Iskander, and James, who, by the way, started with us, I think 1 or 2 weeks before the summit. So they have definitely been thrown at the deep end without any prior warning. So thanks to all of them as well. And good, so that's us, and not much else to say, but we do very much look forward to seeing you at the CE Sustainable Finance Summit 2024.
The dates are 20th to 24th of May next year.
You have the dates?
Yes, the hotel's booked. We'll be here in the Mandarin Oriental again for 5 days. Just 5 days, with a 2-day special prior to the summit for the media. So we will shift to 7 days next year. So let's see how many days we can add.
Let's discuss that internally first, Linda, before making announcements. But as you can see, also, Linda already lost her voice. So let's continue this discussion over some nice drinks. And thank you so much again, all the panelists.